how to drive the most dangerous car in Assetto Corsa Competizione, why you should want it, and how to actually do it. In this video, I'm gonna talk about how to make the Honda safe, how to be somewhat competitive and use this car and be a black sheep in the field, because not a lot of people pick the Honda, and if you do and you find some setups on the internet, you probably get killed a whole lot. This video, I will talk about this car. I've struggled with this car for a million years, and I think I have some solutions to make this car at least a lot safer without suffering so much competitiveness. Let's get into it. I'm gonna provide 3 free setups, one being high downforce, mid downforce, and low downforce. And if you check the link down below to my Patreon, I put a free collection there with a setup solver and a track choice PDF file, which kind of setup you need to choose for that one. And that can really solve everything in your Honda experience. You basically can use 3 setups for every track and use a solver to fine-tune it to your liking. And let's not joke around a whole lot. Just here is the setup. If you want to use it, pause the video if you need to use it. First, I need to talk about the lap that I did on Spa, because it's an absolute horrible car for Spa, but I figured it out for Spa. And if you can understand this lap, then we can go into the screen and I'll explain you how to build up a faster Honda from this setup. Let's look at that lap. And I want to show you some things. So we really need to look at the inputs here on the bottom. Yeah, here it's the green one line is the throttle and the red line is the braking. First, when we come to this corner, we really need to cut it and be gentle with steering inputs. There's no way around it with the Honda. You need to take care of your steering input. After this lap, I will explain setup changes that can help you. So whenever you're hitting the brakes with this car fully, you need to trail brake, bleed off the brakes, but as soon as you release the throttle or the brake, you need to touch the throttle again. This somehow creates stability in this car, right? Especially here as well. You see my bleeding off the brakes very gently, and then as soon as I bleed off the brakes, I start touching the throttle again. Over here, a little bit of a dangerous situation. Now, what is also important, again, if I approach this corner right here, so you can see I'm hitting the brakes. This is not a track guide, by the way, but it's just me explaining how you need to drive that Honda. So if I go a little bit further, here I start releasing the brakes, and here more. Now, this is a very dangerous moment with the Honda. This setup that I'm giving you here in this video will be way more easier and way more forgiving in this moment, but just know that if you're going more advanced with a Honda, this moment gets more exaggerated. So at this point, let's just push another second forward. This small moment creates rotation when I'm coasting, but it gets very snappy at some point. So you need to consider that whenever you release the brakes, you immediately need to apply some throttle, like a few %. And that will already keep the back more stable. That's something what you really want to do with this car. And it's the same with the Porsche in a way. Now, another thing I want to say about this setup and how I build setups, I'm heard from other people my setups can be of a stable understeering nature, but I do get pretty good lap times. Same for this, I did it like a 217 point whatever with the low wing. I'm able to do this because I keep bleeding off brakes mid-corner, and that helps me to rotate the car. And then when I do that, I can push full throttle, because the problem with this car is as soon as you go on throttle, it tends to understeer. That's over here as well. I push the throttle and it's really understeery everywhere. So you need to create rotation in the car whenever you are mid-corner. After that you cannot do that anymore, and obviously it's gonna take some time, and it's still a Honda, it's still pretty difficult to drive, but I really believe with the setups that I'm gonna give you in this video, you're gonna be way more consistent. And I already did a few races on low fuel motorsport. I'm a little bit off the pace with this car. I'm also a lot more ultimates is also not helping my competitiveness, but I could just keep it on track. And I really believe that this can be valuable because I was struggling a lot with this car to keep it on track. So yeah.
That was 217.34.
So let's talk about this lowdown for setup. If you go to the link down below, the other two setups are also there in the Patreon, which you can use. So have a look. Let's talk about the first thing. A lot of setups have the minimum camber on the front and the maximum caster. Somehow you get more grip from that, and yeah, it's maybe not super realistic. Anyways, but for this car, this also is a great recipe to put yourself in a spin and murder the half of the field, because you cannot control that front end, or at least I cannot control that front end. So when I start dropping the caster and get some less camber on the front, the fronts are less biting and less direct, right? You see people drop the toe on the front to get rid of that effect. I haven't really found that to be super useful, for me at least, but this is really good. And now I'm steering into the corner, let's say El Rouge Radiant, that really helps me to keep that front end more in check. Then the electronics. I've seen setups that have the maximum TC2. Interesting, I just found this out, so maybe you can test it out. What you wanna consider if you're on throttle and you're still like feeling that the back end steps out too much whenever you're on throttle, you could try the ECU map 1. It has the same pace, but the aggressiveness, that the way the car releases its power, it's more nuanced. So you got some more forgiveness on throttle behavior. That can really help you with the ECU map 1. Obviously you can drop the traction control or increase it as you go. Then we go to, I always use these brakes, whatever. I also use 30 liters to test out cars. Now, let's talk about this screen a little bit. I run a pretty high brake bias. And if you want even more forgiveness on those fast corners, you can just push that steer ratio up. Now you need to steer more to get the wheels to turn from left to right. That can really help you with this car to create forgiveness. This is all about forgiveness on that front end. This front end is so dominant, absolutely insane. So the rest of the settings. To make this car digestible, I picked the halfway wheel rates because that kind of feels better for me. You see a lot of meta stuff, they drop the bump stop rates to the bottom, and for a lot of cars this really works well, but it's also very one-dimensional and it creates more grip on the front. But that's something I don't want for this car, but this car on the front keeps murdering me every corner I take. So I increase the bump stop rates and I have pretty low ranges on the front. You can drop this even more. If you feel this car is just pointing into corners too much, you can drop this even more. This means that the car will pitch even less and gets less aggressive on the braking and on off throttle behavior. Then the anti-roll bar, a lot of setups, they have very low anti-roll bar to create grip on the back. I'm not so sure with this car. I really believe if you increase that anti-roll bar, we create some rotation on throttle, but I also feel some aerodynamic stability because of it, right? Again, the preload differential, I see people do it on the max, try it out. This just worked really well for me. Now, if you are struggling with this car on the exit, or you want to increase somehow more grip on the back, you can just increase these values, right? Now, you don't have to remember all these changes because there is the PDF file, the setup solver, and it will show you the first, second, and third option for your particular problem in the way you drive or what track you drive. So check that out in the link below. Okay, good. Noise. Let's go to the dampers. Also, with the meta dampers, they have minimum bump, fast bump, max rebound, fast rebound. I don't know, I just created a lot of bump because this makes the car pitch less under the initial braking. That really helped me out. Then the absolute most ridiculous thing I did is increase the front ride height. Because this car just bottoms out in Radeon and Eau Rouge. It's for me, it's impossible to drop these ride heights on the front and to increase this caster. If you do this, then you'll have the most potential lap time, but that's for like 3 players or maybe 10 players on the whole ACC player base who can actually get away with this. I cannot get away with this, and I'm not even I'm not saying I'm a pro or anything, but I cannot do it. I cannot drive like this. This is absolutely, I tried, but I can't. So again, these one to the minus and this one on 3 degrees. So I also want to show you the high downforce setup and explain a little bit. Again, I have this ride heights, right? But on some tracks, you might not have the problem of that aggressive entry. And what I would do, and test this out yourself, this is not a solution one size fits all, but you can try this instead. And you will be a bit faster overall. Also, why you want to drive this car, it is super on its acceleration. It's absolutely not fast in a straight line unless you're using a low downforce setup, and it is an absolute nightmare on curbs. But somehow you can get a special feeling with some cars, and especially when you're the only car driving it and actually owning a lot of like Ferraris and McLarens and BMWs, maybe Ford Mustangs, then yeah, it just can bring you a special feeling. Thanks for watching.